What's up, guys? Today I'm back at it with another video for you, and even though it may look like it, this is not actually a repair or restoration video. I decided that I'm too lazy to try and put this iMac G4 somewhat back together, so it's just going to be chilling out here. But as I said, today is a little bit of a different video. It's kind of a story more than anything else that I was recently recounting to one of my friends, and I thought it also might make a good video, so I'm going to share it with all of you too. So most of you probably don't know this, but I'm actually a software developer. I don't do anything with hardware or anything like that. That's just a hobby and for fun. But I also like to have fun with like the world of software and development and stuff like that too. So back in, I don't know, 2016 or it's probably actually 2015, I started laying down the initial roots of a project that ended up going viral for like a hot second. I mean like a hot second. For people who like Macs and appreciate like, you know, Apple things and Macs and whatever, if you haven't already seen it, you'll get a kick out of it. If you have seen it, well, I mean, you already know what to expect, sort of. So the story is that I think it was back in like fall 2015. I don't know. I was like loopy, tired, delirious, whatever, from probably just burning the midnight oil a little bit too much, and I had this idea that I thought would be hilarious, which would be to re-implement macOS Finder. And not just any macOS Finder, right? Like you guys know how the Finder is on like modern Macs like this one, or even on what it looked like on you know, an iMac G4 on some of the older versions of macOS 10. But I decided that I was going to re-implement the Finder. And so what does that mean? What does that actually mean? It means that I wanted it to look, it's essentially, I built a file management application and I made it look about as pixel for pixel accurate of the original macOS classic Finder as I possibly could. My reference was System 753. So I just had some screenshots sitting around of various Finder windows on, you know, inside of on one of those old machines, on one of those old systems. And I looked at them and dissected them. I got zoomed into these images really, really, really big and figured out how to redraw all those interface elements. Now, the crazy thing about this is it looks extremely accurate to the original one, but I implemented it using modern macOS APIs and stuff. So they're not being drawn, none of these controls or anything are being drawn with some port of the controls from the Macintosh toolbox. They're not being drawn with the Quick Draw API. They're being drawn with the core graphics, with the Quartz APIs that are built into macOS 10. And so if you think about it, the Finder in this, like the System 7.5 days, was fairly simple compared to what we have now. You really had, I don't even think you had list view. I don't think list view showed up until macOS 8, if I remember right. And so you just had these windows with icons in them. And you might think that that would be fairly easy to redraw, but it turns out that this project, I would say, more than anything, tedious, very tedious. So I didn't opt to use any like graphic imagery or anything like that. Like I said, I actually wrote 2D graphics drawing code using Core Graphics to recreate these controls from scratch. But I'm doing it on top of AppKit. So the windows that you're about to see, all the controls, the buttons, the scroll bars, the icons representing folders, the toolbars, and whatever. Those are, well, I'll just say it. They're subclasses of either NS View or NS Control. We're going to find out which one that is. And they're all living inside of instances of NS Window. And so these are all next step, NS next step classes that didn't exist in the classic Mac OS and stuff, right? So I think it's the first time, probably the only time anyone has ever done anything like this. I've recreated from scratch a clone of the System 7.5 Finder using modern macOS APIs. And it'll actually also crawl through your real file system. So you could potentially use this as an actual like file manager and whatever. It's not very good. I don't recommend it, but you could to a degree. So what happened with this project, right? I started it, like I said, in 2015. I originally wrote it using Swift and whatever. And this was just the, I was just starting to write some of the controls, like the close button or the minimize button, the title bar. I started it in Swift. And if you remember back in like 2015, Swift was probably on version 2. It was really unstable, it was buggy, it was slow, Xcode crashed a lot. And ultimately, I just kind of got fed up with it and set it aside, and then came back to it later. And so when I came back to this, I decided that I didn't want to use Swift again because I'd gotten burned by it. So I didn't really trash the existing project, but I started a completely new project, and I started it in Objective-C. And from there, I actually had a good amount of success. I was able to get all the controls rewritten, or enough of the controls that I needed to get rewritten. I was able to get all of them assembled into a window and be all cohesive and stuff. And then I was also able to get it to crawl through your file system on your computer, at least to some degree, and show the contents inside of that Finder window. So, the Swift was a little bit of a false start. And looking back at it, I'm pretty glad that I switched to Objective-C, because there has been so many more changes to Swift in between then and now. So essentially what I want to do is I want to open this project up and see if we can compile it and if it'll actually still compile. And second off, see if it'll run and it'll still work, or if things, Cocoa APIs have been deprecated or anything. And then third, I just want to show it to you guys. All right, so we are recording my screen now, so you should be able to see the screen of my computer here. I guess to get started, there is a website for all of this, by the way. It's classicmacfinder.com. And to be honest, I actually haven't changed anything about this website in years. I mean, it's been a long time, right? So you get this cute little macOS window, and I believe that if you look at the title bar up here and everything, I believe I implemented that using HTML5 Canvas. So I basically took some of the drawing code that I did and I ported it to HTML5 Canvas, and that's what you're seeing up here for this title bar. And if you double click, this is nice. If you double click the title bar, it'll do that whole window shade behavior and hide the div below it. And I think you can even click the escape button and it'll close the window out altogether, and there's no way to get it back unless you reload the page. So what do we have on here? So apparently this project aims to be a functional recreation of the classic macOS Finder. Now you can experience a pixel-for-pixel clone of the original Macintosh Finder on your modern Mac. This application is written in Objective-C and Cocoa. So you can already kind of see what's going on here, right? Like the menu bar up here in this screenshot is certainly newer than, the menu bar that you would have had back when your Finder windows were looking like this, right? Like it would have been complete stark white. The Apple logo would have been the multicolor one, and you definitely wouldn't have been using, I don't know, whatever that Helvetica font is or whatever it is. You would have been using that back then. So you can already see a little bit of what's going on here. And the wild thing is that this actually works on your file system. It'll go through, and as you open Windows up, scan that directory and see what's in there, and then display them, whether they're files or they're folders, with the appropriate icon. So I I can't wait to actually like show this to you guys. So I had an Apache 2 license. It was just something I picked and whatever. Everybody was doing MIT licenses back then. A lot of people still do use MIT as well. But I decided I wanted to buck the trend a little bit, so I picked Apache V2. Not that I think it makes any particular difference for this project. It's open source. I originally put it on Bitbucket, but I actually might move it to GitHub, to be honest. Bitbucket became a lot less like social versus GitHub. So I don't know, maybe the discovery would be better on GitHub. And finally, I made a pre-compiled app binary that you can download and run on your Mac. I highly doubt that this runs now. We can try it and see what happens. So let's go ahead and hit download. Oh geez, is the download broken? Oh no, it'll allow it. All right, let's see here. Classic Finder. It's an app downloaded from the internet. Are you sure? Yeah, let's open it. Oh geez. Oh no, it kind of works, but I think these black bars here, those black bars are probably to do with my Mac being in dark mode. Dark mode for macOS didn't exist when I wrote this. Let's see here. If I go to appearance, I think, and flip it to light. Yeah, okay. All right. I guess that's a bug that I need to fix. I never made this actually aware of the different appearance modes on there. But like I said, so we have this. Frankly, I'm surprised that this still works without any kind of issue. So this is already making me very happy that it's still up and running. And the cool thing is, it's really live. Like it's really live. It's really real, right? So it's looking at the size of the solid state drive in this MacBook Pro, and it's seeing how much is available. It's telling you the actual number of items that are in the window, and all that. So let's open up applications and stuff, right? So we can see a little bit more in here. And I think like the scrolling is a little janky if I remember right. Remember, it's been years since I've looked at this. Okay, so the scrolling, it does work. It might be a little janky though, right? So, or maybe it doesn't work. Okay, well maybe it doesn't work. Maybe I lied. But you can see the apps that I have in here and what some of these look like, right? So if let's say, I guess one of the things that I never really fixed either about this was application bundles, right? So in macOS 10, application bundles they're really just folders that have a special file, like a special flag added to them in the file system that makes makes macOS know, okay, this isn't just a folder, this is an application directory, there's an executable inside of it. Don't display this as a folder to the user, display this using, the icon asset file that's inside of that and whatever. And frankly, I don't know enough about how that works. I'm sure I could figure it out to figure out how to get actual application icons in here. It also might be a little bit jarring if I did that though, like if there was a modern transmit application icon sitting inside of this window, or the modern Plex amp, like none of these icons would look, period with it if I were to actually use application icons here. But I think you can open these if I remember right. No? Shoot. I thought you could open these. Well, that's a bummer. Okay, all right. Well, I guess you can't open these, and I guess scrolling's broken, so I'm pleasantly surprised and also kind of saddened and whatever. But I guess the good news is the application still works, right? And it still works to, do I want to? Yeah, why not? Let's see here. What does this do? All right. I'm just going to ignore. Oh, that's a database dump. No wonder it opened in Nova. What if I do this? Yeah, look at that. Little graphic launch. So, okay, so documents apparently launch. Applications do not launch, but apparently documents will launch. And you can see here, I have this little, I don't know, I think I used it as a social icon for the tidelist.com website. And it's like funny too, right? So like if you've been paying attention, like this also is keeping track of which windows should be active, right? And should have all the color filled in on the title bar and stuff. And that was a little bit of a tricky programming challenge, if I remember right. I'm not quite exactly sure what I did about that. That might be the pub sub pattern. If you know anything about object-oriented design, it was probably the pub sub pattern, and I used, what NS Notification Center. I bet you I used NS Notification Center. So I actually don't think I have this project on this computer. I don't think I ever copied it onto this computer. I could be wrong, but if we go and look in my dev directory, yeah, I don't think it's actually on there. So let's go ahead and close this out. Let me see something real quick. I'll be right back. I'm pulling out the external SSD. I think if this project is anywhere, it's probably on this drive. Now, granted, I could download it. I could re-download it or reclone it from Bitbucket, but I suspect that some of those fixes I have, like scrolling and stuff like that, if anywhere, they're probably on my local copy. So let's see if we can find that. Yes, we do want to. All right, so I think this is probably in this directory. If we go to the C's, Classic Finder. So this is probably it. I think this is it. Look, there's the old Adobe Illustrator icon that I created. It doesn't look very good, but I think it's accurate. It just doesn't look very good. The README file. Okay, all right, so let's take this. Let's copy this onto my local machine. We'll go ahead and try and open this thing up. I mean, we'll see what happens. Like I said, I have not opened this in, I don't know, probably 3 or 4 years at this point. Okay, so you can see that we have a lot of Objective-C files over here. And persistence. Floppy disk, what was that? Oh, I guess, file properties. Wow. Okay, so I guess I made this class called CFR floppy disk, and this was kind of an interface for, these are all class methods. This was kind of an interface for saving like preferences or saving things about the windows, like if you moved an icon into a certain place or if you moved a window into a certain place. I think what this would do is this would write this into, it would write it into your application support directory. Wow. I'm pleased myself sometimes. And a string plus hashes. Okay, models. So, like I said, let's see here. So for example, let's look at just a little bit of code here for the sake of it. this is one of the close buttons inside of the windows, right? So I've subclassed NS control here, and this is just the header file. And now we have the actual implementation file, the .m file, 2/18/17. So from the date I'm recording this video talking to you guys, like right here, right now, this is almost 7 years ago since I've like opened any of this up or written anything in here. Okay, so looking at this, what do we have here? I've overridden the draw rect method inside of this. So NS control has a draw rect method, and any graphics code that you put inside of that draw rect method, anytime the computer signals to this class that it needs to be updated, it'll run through everything that's inside of this method here. So NS control comes from NS view, and NS view has it's a superclass that has a function in there that you typically override. It's called draw rect. And because NS control comes from NS view, NS control also has draw rect, and then when you subclass NS control, then you can override draw rect. And so what happens inside of draw rect is all the graphics code that you need to, basically it's a place where you put all the graphics code that you need in order to draw whatever you're drawing on screen inside of its little view, inside of that little area that it's in. So in this case, like I said, you're putting all of the graphics code inside of here. So in this case, I guess I'm not actually using Quartz directly. I'm using the Cocoa classes. So, and this is, I don't know, this is probably, this video is going to be so long, and I'm sorry about that. You have this layer of graphics, like a graphics programming layer called Core Graphics. And it's a C API, and it's kind of low level, and it's really not too hard to use. If you've ever used anything like HTML5 Canvas, Core Graphics is very, very similar. I mean, there's pointers and stuff involved, but it's very, very similar. And if I remember right, I believe HTML5 Canvas kind of came from Apple, who probably based it off of Core Graphics. And I think HTML5 Canvas, again, if I remember right, was sort of invented by Apple in order to support dashboard widgets. So they wanted to be able to have some kind of 2D graphical programming concept inside of the web, which never happened before. Like nobody had done anything like that before. So I think it's fairly safe to say that Apple invented the Canvas API for HTML. So anyways, all that said, on top of Core Graphics, there are a couple of very simple drawing methods that are a little bit more cohesive and coherent with Cocoa and with higher level programming. So these essentially are wrappers over top of, so like NS Rectfill and all that. These are wrappers over top of Core Graphics, not really methods or classes, but they're wrappers over Core Graphics functions and stuff, but they make it just a little bit less messier and a little less sloppier. So it looks like here I opted to use the Cocoa drawing classes to draw this close button. And yeah, I'm just looking at how I did this. This is interesting. Okay. And so we also have some events here too, right? Part of the interactive bit of all of this, right, is these controls that we're drawing. If we're making a new close button, users need to be able to click on it and have it do something. So, and not only that, these controls need to update their appearance in a lot of cases. Like if a button's depressed, it's going to have a different appearance versus a button that is just hanging there and chilling out. It's all inactive and whatever. So we have a little bit of state here. We're storing whether the button's being clicked on, and we're listening for a mouse down event and a mouse up event, and we're setting that state as it should be, right? And when one of these event happens, we call set needs display. In turn, that tells OS that it needs to run this draw rect function again, and it goes through and draws it. And we have a little branch here too, right? So if the button's clicked, it has a slightly different appearance versus if it's not clicked. This is turning into like a whole programming lesson, so I'm sorry for that. But if you're interested, I hope it's interesting. All right, so we have all these things in here. I think, yeah, all these icons in here too. These look so bad, but I don't know. I mean, I guess that's what a vectorized Finder logo would look like today, approximately. Okay, all right, let's get to this. So, not nice. Okay. So it actually picked up my team for Xcode, and I guess it's signing it. So I'm not going to have any any application signing issues going on in here. Kind of nice. 10.11 again. This is how long ago I did this. Was that far back? Let's see what branches I got. See, look at this. Window resize. Last committed July 29, 2020. I guess I lied. I have opened this in the last couple of years. Okay, so this may be, it's either that or it's in develop. In one of these places is probably one of these branches. There's probably code in there to handle scrolling and probably some window resize improvements that I just never got over the finish line. But let's build and run this. Let's build and run this bad boy and see what happens. We got very minimal errors. Right? So that's one of the great things about Objective-C. So as chaotic as Swift has been over the last, I mean, honestly, it's still kind of chaotic, right? It's much better now, but it just was so chaotic. Like this thing, I haven't touched this in 4 years, and this thing still compiles and still runs. And it does it in, I mean, you saw it in like less than 5 seconds, right? Like, that's amazing to me. So I'm really, really glad that Apple, I don't know if it was this last year or the year before, one of the recent WWDCs came out and basically said, yeah, Objective-C and AppKit are going to be around for a long time to come. And I'm glad about that, just because, there's still some things like Swift UI is kind of buggy, and there's stuff missing in the macOS form of it that just make it a little nasty to work with. And so I think it's like, this is like a perfect like argument for why Objective-C and AppKit are still really great outside of some of the other things, which I could get into. That's a whole other story. But why these are still so great is because like, this is just amazing. Like, I haven't opened this thing up in like, almost 4 years. And again, just compiles and runs. And not even a lot of web projects work like that today, right? So if you're a developer and you've used, Node.js or something like that, like the issues with switching between Node runtimes and compatibilities between libraries on Node runtimes and things like that. It can be a huge frustration. If you've ever done React Native, that's also that's a nasty one too to deal with. Like, there's things that are breaking in there all the time. So again, the fact that this just compiles and runs with very minimal issue is it's just overjoying to my little developer heart. Couple of things I guess we could fix: update the recommended Xcode settings. The project structure probably needs to have some updates done to it, but there it is, man. It works. So same thing, right? So we still have, what is that? I guess there's some graphics glitches going on in here too that maybe need to be addressed. The interesting thing too with this graphics code, right, is we saw it's all just 2D. Like I'm not doing any kind of 3D graphics programming or anything in here, but you're able to simulate some of the some 3D-ness and whatever just by highlights and shadows, like very, very simple highlights and shadows inside of these controls. Like the close button looks like it's, raised up a little bit inside of its little, title bar here and all that. So, this is cool, right? So I think this is maybe worth, updating this, extending it, building it out a little bit more, fixing some of these issues. Like, I don't know why this user's text box is, I don't know why these are so big. But let me know what you think, right? If you want to see me spend a little more time and try and modernize this a little bit, and just in terms of, bringing it up to speed. It doesn't look like it needs much maintenance work, but bringing it up to speed, filling it out a little bit more, making some of the features actually work, right? Like I never got to the special menu or the label menu or anything like that. But if you want to see me do some more work on this, leave a comment and whatever, and just let me know. Let me know what you think about this project. If you saw it back, when it had its little viral moment, I think like the thing that really made my heart skip when this thing went viral was the fact that, so Apple very famously has a block of IP addresses. They're old enough that they, just own a block of IP addresses, and they're very famous. I think it's 34 dot whatever, 34 dot something. And so those IP addresses show up in your server logs and whatever. And when this started to go viral, I went and I found, I did a Google search and said, okay, what's Apple's IP address range? And then went into my server logs and looked around. And like the thing that like made my like heart skip and whatever was the fact that like people inside of Apple were seeing this because I saw those IP addresses in my server log. So it's like, like I got this into the mothership and whatever. And I don't know, like I never heard anything from anyone at Apple, right? Like I never got any cease and desists. I didn't get, a whole lot of comments about it or anything like that. It just kind of exploded all over the place. The thing that really like drove me to like, I almost fell over and whatever when I saw it was, I opened up my phone and I saw that Chris Espinosa at Apple, which if you don't know anything about, we'll open that. We'll get into that. He retweeted my project and whatever, and then went through and critiqued it a little bit because in some of the screenshots, the graphics weren't quite there or weren't quite updated. So if you don't know who Chris Espinosa is, he's like one of the OGs of Apple. Like he was there in the Steve Jobs garage days. He probably worked on almost every major product, especially up through the 90s. I mean, I don't know exactly his resume exactly, but he definitely was on the original Mac team. And so to have somebody from the original Mac team see this and like get it, like, oh, this crazy guy took, our original work from back in the 80s and made it like, recreated it on macOS 10. That was like, I just fell over. Like I had to quit for the day. Like it was too much. It definitely made my day. So that's the story of, I don't know, probably the goofiest programming project I've ever done in my entire life. And, again, getting that retweet by Chris Espinosa just like it knocked me out. So I don't know. Again, if you want to see me do some more work on this and make this a little bit more robust, implement some more of these features in there and stuff, let me know. Leave some comments on there. Let me know what you think about it. You can download it. Apparently the original download still works, at least for now. I might need to re-sign this at some point because my whatever developer ID signing profile I used back then is probably getting close to expiring. But yeah, as far as computer restorations, there's certainly more coming. Like I'm not gonna try and Steve Jobs on that and keep it all close to the vest. Currently working on this iMac G4. It's going to be a good one. It's going to be a good one when I'm done. I'm excited to show you guys what I'm going to do to this to soup it up.